Okay, hey guys, today for our PLC, I'm going to present one of my projects that I've been doing for my master's program, okay? So, our signature assessment is really utilizing PLCs to improve the all-around school community. So, I had to come up with a vision statement, which I am going to read because you probably can't read it from where you're sitting. So, the professional learning communities in our school will revolve around three main ideas: learning, collaboration, and results. It's essential that all three elements be practiced by teachers and students. The teachers will learn new research-based best practices, collaborate with colleagues, and review data or the results in order to plan. And students will practice, they will learn the content, they will collaborate in the 21st century classroom, and the results will be shown through our map testing data. Okay, the agenda for today's PLC is that first we'll just talk a little more about what PLCs are and how we can use them better in our schools. Next, we will describe a problem that I identified just within my own classroom, which was the grading and the time that it takes to assess paperwork was too time-consuming that I couldn't really provide adequate feedback to my students. I couldn't make them better. All I was using my assessment for was really just like a cumulative grade, and so it wasn't very useful. And my vision for change is to better use Google Classroom so that I could assess quicker and so that I could give feedback easier to my students, because we all know if it's easier for us, we're gonna do it. So I've created a PowerPoint to show what I did in my own classroom, some examples of how I used Google Classroom and why I think it would be better for us. The table of contents of the PowerPoint is just quickly part one. I'm going to identify the problem, which I already told you about. Step two, which is select a strategy, which is to use the technology in Google Classroom. Step three is reflect. I did stop about 2 weeks in and reflect on how it was going, and then I made some changes, came up with some ideas that I could even make it better, and then I continued implementing Google Classroom in my reading class. Part two, step four, is the feedback, the examples, the data that I was able to gather. And then step six was reflecting on the whole experience and then coming up with some next steps for myself and for our school. So step one was identifying the problem. And again, because some of you might not be able to read this from the screen, I'm just going to read it straight off. I currently use paper journals and worksheets in reading to accompany my novel studies. The problem is, because I teach over 50 students, I'm unable to grade these in a timely manner. This affects student learning because I'm unable to identify streaks and weaknesses until it's almost too late to do anything about it. This works for more of a summative assessment and a way to gather grades, but I need a quicker assessment to serve as useful formative assessment of learning objectives. Step two, this is strategy and intervention. I plan to use Google Classroom to streamline my assessment process in reading. Some pros. All I need in order to check their work is access to the internet. I can use my iPad, I can use my computer, I can use anything. Next, a pro is students love working on the Chromebooks and the iPads, so their excitement for technology hopefully will come through and they'll even produce better work. Another pro is that it also builds 21st century learning skills for the students. A couple of cons. In order to work effectively, the students will need a very structured guidance on how I want them to use this technology and the product that I want them to make. And that will take time to really build those expectations. Also, another con is it will be time-consuming converting all of my lessons and ideas and activities that I currently use for my novels into Google Forms, Google Docs, and online assessments. So, step three, how did it go? After reading chapters 1 through 12 of a 20-chapter book, these were kind of the thoughts that I had on how things were going. The students really enjoyed getting onto Google Classroom and finding their assignment after reading each chapter. As a matter of fact, they were really sad, like if we would read a chapter and we didn't have an assignment, they were kind of bummed out. So The students were really easily, naturally, is what I said, naturally figured out how to navigate Google Classroom. It's more scary for us as teachers to use Google Classroom, but those students pick it up in no time. Also, some students' responses were incomplete, so it was clear that I needed to give more explicit directions in my planning. Another thought that I had was that students were exposed to forms, which is Google, it's kind of like you could do a survey or you could do a quiz. Docs, which is a lot like Microsoft Word. Slides, which is a lot like a PowerPoint presentation. And they were able to use all those programs to answer comprehension questions and actually create their own story prediction charts and display their own ideas through those. This is more reflection continued. I was able to walk around the room as they were working and give immediate feedback to students if I noticed they were doing something wrong. And I didn't even have to walk around the room. I could have done all this straight from my computer, but I prefer to be a little mobile while the students are actually working. I could check student progress easily, daily, actually hourly, from the ease of my own computer. And I was able to leave comments on their work immediately without having to collect all of their papers and all of their journals at one time. I could just do it from my computer and I have to worry about the collection and then the repassing out of their work. Another pro was that I did not ever feel the weight of the stacks of papers to grade. I was able to just hop on the internet, grade a couple at a time. I didn't have to do all of them at one time, and that was really useful for me. And then last, it says Google Forms provides different settings, and it shows different data that is just really amazing. I could never gather that information and then make the spreadsheets and pie charts and everything that it does in a second. Okay, so part 2 of the presentation is changes made and implementation part 2. After those first 12 chapters, I sat down, I did the review that I just gave you, and these were things that I did during the second implementation. I was more descriptive in my directions for each assignment to shrink the margin for error. If I gave them a better outline of what I wanted, they were able to answer it and more completely. Another thing I did was I made sure to create assignments for each chapter because they were so upset when they didn't have an assignment to do. I thought, even if it's just something easy as, what do you think about when the character did blah, blah, blah? If it's just a personal opinion answer, they love to just hop on and give me that feedback. Also, I began to upgrade my assessments. It was so easy to embed video and pictures into my comprehension questions or big projects. I was able to deepen the depth of knowledge questions that I was asking and assignments that I was giving. For example, they wrote a friendly letter to one of the characters in the book to help him out with a decision that he was making. And that was just one of the things they were able to do. Next, I'm going to show you a series of, really, they're just screenshots of what you would see as the teacher. This is just Google Classroom. This is what an assignment would look like on this, pretty much for the student and for the teacher. It gives a description of the assignment, and then they're able to open, whether it's a document or a form, and it takes them where they need to go. Once the students have completed the assignment, this is what it kind of looks like on the teacher's point of view, where you have all of your students in their work, and all you have to do is click on an individual student, and it pulls up their work. For example, I have a student, this was the friendly letter I was talking about, and it has the directions so that I know when I'm assessing the directions that I gave so that it actually helps me to check their work better. It reminds me what I was giving this assignment for. You can give feedback if you want this assignment to continue, if you want them to change their mistakes and it be a working document, you can put comments on the side, or you can actually use other Google devices, or it's not the right word, but you can come up with rubrics to assess it right there on the spot. This is an example of a Google form, which this is used for, you can do multiple choice questions, true or false, or you can just do an open-ended question and you can receive all the students' responses. I just found Google Forms as a really easy way to organize all of the students' answers. Whether or not I was going to take a score or not, I was able to get immediate feedback, and it was really easy for me to see. This is an example of how you receive the information from forms. On this side, you will see it's actually more like an Excel spreadsheet of their answers. And on this side, this is within the form, it will create a pie chart of who answered what. And it's a quick 2-second, I can see what most of my students answered. So, a reflection on how I thought it all went and the next steps for our school and for my own classroom. The effects of using Google Classroom during reading novel study. I was able to provide quick feedback to the students. Changes can be easily made by the students, supporting the idea that the assessment is helping them to improve their work. So much ahead of the time, I would collect their work, set it to the side to grade, and then it never really got back to them to fix or change anything. So I've really found that Google is a progressive learning and not just start and end. The next thing is students were interested and the involvement was really high because they do love technology. So that was a pro. Assessments were used to assess the individual learning objectives, not just a final assessment or summative assessment. And also, I as a teacher felt more successful with the use of Google Classroom, and it helped me to manage, assign, and assess my students quicker and cleaner. The next steps that I see are, I want to share my results, which I'm doing with you all today, but even extend it to the rest of our faculty so that we can all feel more comfortable and see the good parts of using Google Classroom in our school. But also for myself, I hope to transition. This was just one novel study, so it's going to take a lot of work to transition work and ideas that I've already had into the Google Classroom and forms and docs and slides to kind of streamline my instruction. So thank you very much, and I'll take questions in just a minute.